Support the Amigos podcast and keep the Amiga goodness flowing for just $1 a month. Visit our page at patreon.com/AmigosPodcast.
Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
Amigos, the podcast about everything Amiga. Amigos is a proud member of the Throwback Network, your home for quality retro podcasts. And now, here are your hosts, Aaron Dowdy and John Bodovkar Schaller.
Hey everybody, welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we're going to talk about R-Type and R-Type 2.
They're our type of game.
R-Type again. That was the working title.
Oh, wow. They should have went with that one.
We're going to start with some feedback this week, Aaron.
Okay.
And we're going to hear from Laurent Giroux.
Okay.
Are you familiar with our pal Laurent?
I have had words with Mr. Laurent Giroux. It's funny, I can't call him Mr. Giroux because I can't pronounce one without the other.
It's true.
You know?
He was a game dev back in the day, and so he has lots of interesting perspectives.
I love it.
But he has some feedback on our Sly Spy episode.
Wow, that's...
Yeah.
I have no idea when we did that.
He says, I am way less tolerant to the Sly Spy version, Amiga version, than you guys seem to be. He shares your
Sly
opinion.
Spy. I was thinking Guy Spy. I misheard you. Sorry.
What is Guy Spy?
Did we ever do Guy Spy? I was thinking about Ready Soft. Carry on.
Okay.
Sly Spy. Okay, go ahead.
So he agrees with you that the monster HUD is both unnecessary and ungraceful.
Yes.
Correct. And he says that it's for a very specific reason. You want to take a guess of what that is?
I'm sure it's performance based.
No, it's not.
Laziness?
It's laziness. Because this was the port of the ST version of the game.
Okay.
Okay, so the reason for the big HUD is basically speed. Since the ST doesn't benefit from any hardware scrolling assistance, the graphics must be copied manually by the CPU when scrolling. This implies that the bigger the surface area to scroll, the slower the game will be, which is why for many scrolling ST games, the scrolling area is usually made as small as possible, thus encouraging the presence of very large HUDs.
No kidding. So I knew that I'd read that this was they were pretty sure this was a port from the ST. Mm-hmm. So that's how we got some of these HUDs. They're ports from the ST, and the ST's a lower performing machine when it comes to scrolling.
Right. And
what a kick in the pants.
And so that's why games like Battle Squadron and Swiv, they don't have that HUD because they were original Amiga ports. They weren't ported from the ST.
That is irritating. Laurent's right.
Here's another little tidbit that Laurent says.
All right.
It says, this is another thing that betrays the ST origins of the port. The ST version benefits from parallax scrolling in the bike section, which the Amiga does not have.
All right.
Why? Because the ST CPU is clocked slightly higher than the Amiga's, which gives it enough oomph needed to draw that small parallax layer.
All right.
So I guess the Amiga had the up with the coprocessor, but the clock speed in the ST was just a tick faster.
That is good feedback from Laurent.
So thank you, Laurent.
Nice job.
Yeah. Little update on our iTunes magnet giveaway.
It's a big update, isn't it?
We've got several new submissions, so we thank you. We're going to run this contest one more week. So if you have not yet gone to iTunes, the iTunes store in your country, and left us a review, please do it, and you have a chance to win an Amigos magnet. And we'll be giving out several of these. We're not going to be stingy with the magnets.
Something that probably shouldn't be sitting that close to electronics in retrospect.
Oh, you know.
Hey, now, we found out, we learned about iTunes reviews.
We did. So
that's something that's important.
Yeah,
sort of.
Aaron and I were looking at the iTunes store. We're like, man, nobody is leaving us reviews.
We had
What's
two.
going on? And one of them was Chad's.
Yeah,
Amigo Chad.
No one liked us at all.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this is sad.
And so, thanks to the help of our brain trust, especially Chris Folds,
the international brain trust, thankfully,
who is a app developer in his own right. He said that each iTunes store has its own reviews. So if you go to the UK store, you only see UK reviews. I found a service that provides us with an email once a week of all of our international iTunes reviews, so we can monitor all of them. And thank you to all of you that have left us reviews so far. We really appreciate it.
We're doing way better overseas.
Yeah. No, of course, that was never under any doubt. We've always been a continental podcast.
It's very strange, isn't it? two Hurricane West Virginia boys.
It is. It's a weird thing for sure.
People that listen to us are all European.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
Eurocentric machine. People in Europe want to hear it.
What can you do?
It's weird, man.
All right.
Who'd thunk it?
Let's move on to the Amiga news of the
All
week.
right. Breaking news, by the way. I haven't even put this up on the Google Plus page yet, but I just saw it pop onto indieretronews.com, which is one of our favorite sites. And I believe we're ending it. This month's site of the month or last month's site of the month? It was one of them, or maybe the first month. We love these guys. So, Amiga J, the man, the myth, the legend, has culled together another Amiga CD32 collection, and this one near and dear to my heart. It's the Don Bluth Laserdisc collection. This one is packed with good stuff, sorta, which I'll elaborate. So you've got Dragon's Lair and Escape from Sense's Castle, which were sort of second one was an add-on to the first one, but it's basically the cumulative work is Dragon's Lair 1.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got Dragon's Lair 2, Dragon's Lair 3, which is kind of a long story, Space Ace and Space Ace 2, and Space Ace 2 is a lot like, there's more stuff for Space Ace. So that's a good collection. I think Guy Spy is on there as well, which that's why when you said that, I was like, oh, Guy Spy.
Now, what is the plot of Guy Spy?
It's another sort of a Laserdisc game, but there's a little more, it's hard to explain. It was, ReadySoft made it. I love the Laserdisc stuff. Like I said, I always said that I would get whatever console came first with a competent port of Dragon's Lair. And really, the Amiga was the one that I saw before I saw any of the other ones. I was just like, wow, they did it.
Mm-hmm.
They did it. And it was a playable version. It was slow. The interface was goofy. And the copy protection, yoy. I mean, that's why I had to buy the originals, and there was no easy task back in those days, but it was worth it. But that's a cool collection, so that'll be fun. And Amiga J, his stuff's always really good. So, stuff that we've put up this month. Now, this is the tip-top story. I couldn't wait to talk about this. So last week we talked about those wacky, I think it was Italians, who had said that they had came up with a deal with Cloanto to make the Amiga Mini. Right? We were very interested in this, specifically because, as we mentioned, Cloanto is your hookup. You're pretty much going to all paths lead to Cloanto when it comes to doing Amiga, an Amiga Mini, because of the fact that they hold the Kickstart's copyrights and they own a bunch of the Amiga trademarks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, apparently this deal had one small flaw in it, and the deal was no one had told Cloanto because they vigorously denied this statement and said the first they'd heard of it were in some Italian magazines, and that they had not struck a deal with anyone. So I can't say that I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I am disappointed. I think the interest that's generated hopefully will not fall on deaf ears. I still think there's a market for some sort of Amiga-based, game playing device, or like the Super Nintendo Mini. I think everything that needs there, except for the manufacturing. If Cloanto can cobble something together, make a few deals, not that many, but just a few. They've got all those inroads. They've been on the Amiga since forever. I think they're probably the ones that if I worked at Cloanto, I would hook up with someone that did manufacturing and make it happen. That's just me. Now, Cloanto may be fine with what they're doing, but hey, that's a big chunk of pie sitting out there. A lot of people aren't going to mess around with software. And if you're going to get into the Amiga emulation scene, Amiga Fair is probably the way to go. They know that. But most people aren't going to, Uncle Bill is not going to hop on the computer and download that and do it. But Uncle Bill will hook up a HDMI connector and play games like that. That's your market, right? So I think that, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but this looks like a strikeout on this one.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think that the money has got to be right. Cloanto is going to want the lion's share of whatever profit this thing generates. Well, probably rightfully so, because without Cloanto's blessing, all you've got is a hunk of plastic.
Yeah.
So, and it's going to be hard. I think they're going to have a hard time finding a bargaining partner.
I think the technology's out there, right, to produce a cheap, marketable, functional device. Okay, it's there, and I'm talking sub $100 device. Okay, you can't go over that mark, right? And really, that maybe be a little high, but if you put say 30 games on, or didn't say the C64 has 64 games, that's probably ambitious. But let's say you get 40 on there, right? And again, like we talked about last time, get some quick and dirty stuff from the old CD32 collection. Maybe add a few extra things. You go put out a couple decent game pads. Wham bam, Bob's your uncle. It's not that difficult. I mean, you can get a cool case manufactured, and you know how much that'll cost, a few bucks. But I mean, they can make it happen because they can order in bulk. But it may never happen. But I hope it
to me, if you made something that looked like an Amiga 500 that was this shape, that had a functioning keyboard. I mean, this keyboard cost $10. So I mean, the keyboard itself and getting it to interface, because what it is essentially is just adding an extra, Raspberry Pi-like device inside of a keyboard. To me, you should be able to do that fairly cheaply.
I agree. I mean,
it's just a question of how much Cluanto wants to mark it up so they can make.
The way I look at it is this: we've seen that, we mocked it. They've got that little mock-up on there, which is the Raspberry Pi in the homemade case. All right, flashback 5 years ago, all right, where not everyone had a 3D printer. You'd be like, "Holy crap!
That's
look at
awesome,
this!"
yeah.
Right now, you're like, "Oh, I've seen that." It wouldn't take much more than that. The Pi is actually probably overpowered. You could probably use one of the little offshoots, the cheaper ones, like a Pi Zero type thing.
Right.
And then, I mean, it's a cheap bet. What'll cost you is going to be the joystick and the power adapter, and maybe the cabling. It's not going to be that expensive to do. It all comes down to who programs it, and there are plenty of people out there that could put the program together to make it work. Hey, call up Amiga J. This guy's a machine, right? So anyway, I thought that was interesting, but it looks like the kibosh has been put on the Amiga Mini for now.
Cool.
We'll find out. That came in from Chris Folds.
What else you got?
I want to reiterate that we are still running the Amigo Challenge 4, Turrican 2, best score with your first life. There are instructions in the forums to get you set up and tell you where to send your video submission.
And that is everythingamiga.com/forums.
That's right. It is the 27th. It's the cutoff date. And I'm going to pull together whatever I've got, and we will talk about the winners. So even if you stink at it, just do it. We'll put your name up there with the rest of us. Surely you can beat me and him. Our Turrican skills are rival our R-type skills. This is another one. Chris Folds, another great man. He sent us a submission that I literally fell out of my chair. You knew what I was talking about, didn't you? An Odyssey 2 game has been ported over to the Amiga. I love it. Good God Almighty, I love it. The game is called Killer Bees. This was like one of the top titles on the Odyssey 2. And when I say that, I mean, was it one of the top selling games? I don't know. But it's one that people that play the system are like, hey, this is a pretty fun game. I've not tried this yet, but I'm telling you, this week I'll be trying it, and it's going to be great. And boy, I'd like to see more Odyssey 2 stuff ported over. There's some good stuff in there, I mean, again, it's simple stuff. It's neat that the Amiga can play this so well, and it's
Does it bring you back to the Odyssey 2 days, your glory days?
A bit, And I'd sent a message over to Earl. The Odyssey 2,
the Select Game podcast.
Select Game. I was trying. I couldn't get that out of my head. The Select Game podcast, because I listened to Earl's Odyssey 2 show, and I told him, like, now it's time. Now you can get some of that Amiga coverage in there, Earl. And I get to cover some Odyssey 2 and it makes sense.
Right.
I love it.
Right.
So if you've tried this, drop us a line. Tell us what you think. And I'm going to give that a whirl this week.
Does it run this fast on the Odyssey?
Gosh, it's been so long. We'll have to do a compare video, but we'll have the only one, right? We could do it. We could do it with the real hardware. I saw the company release a game yesterday, right before I went to bed. I think it was one of their games they released in Polish. So that's That's one you want to check on. Just go over to the company's webpage. I think it's thecompany.pl in the boat. Mm-hmm. I'll put a link up this evening when I get home. So the company, they're really rocking and rolling. Man, it's good to see those guys back. Too.
I know it. You
know, they're the best. If you are in Poland and you're looking for this game to be released, I wish I could remember what the name of the game was, but I just caught a glimpse of it as I rolled out the door. But that's all I've got. I guess before you get into the site stuff, I'll talk about some of the stuff we released this week that was non-Amiga related, just briefly. Me and Boat were at it again Sunday. This was a mixed bag session because we had a couple of duds that I had trouble with some of my equipment. That's what she said. And so we didn't get as much as we'd hoped, but we did get some stuff in, and we released me and Boat in a very pathetic attempt to play WWF No Mercy on the N64. That came out, I think it was 2 days ago. And we've got some other stuff related to this week's show that we'll be putting up in the next day or so. And so look for those. Me and Boat playing R-Type on the Amiga and the arcade version, and with very similar results, I might add. But I've learned a little bit since that, but man, that was a rough day.
Yeah.
So we'll try that again next time. So sometimes Amiga Studios East has hiccups just like Amiga Studios West does.
Yeah.
But what do you got for site news, Bo?
All right. Well, it was a little bit quiet on the site this week. The biggest story was Dreamcatcher put up an article on one of probably the best games on the system, to be honest with you.
We really liked this, didn't we? Yeah.
This is Rough and Tumble, and this is it's sort of Amiga's answer to Metal Slug. That's the way that I see it.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that at the time, but you're right.
Yeah. This was a late release for the Amiga in '94. And it's just one of the best looking games. Of course, Dreamcatcher's got his signature style where he rolls in a bunch of different things. So make sure you check out this article and play this game if you haven't, because it's a beautiful game.
That was a fun game. I said that was one of the bigger surprises we had. When did we do that? Was that after episode 100 or right before it? I can't remember.
I think we played it some during the marathon.
Did we?
Yeah.
So it would have been probably the 90s. We need to.
No, we did the marathon after episode 100.
I know. That's what I'm saying. So we probably Rough and Tumble somewhere in the 90s.
Yeah.
We need a score sheet to keep track of.
I know.
And we've done so many. I was listening to the Shinto's Jaguar podcast this week, and he was talking about brutal sports football. And I was like, brutal sports football, that sounds pretty fun. We ought to do that for the show. And after he started talking about it, I was like, man, that sounds awful for me. Oh, we did that. We did that already.
Episode 62.
Oh, you remember the episode?
No,
I was so impressed, Bo. Holy smokes. What else you got? Anything else cooking?
That's all the site updates this week.
All right, it's time for Aaron's wacky price challenge.
Okay.
All right, so that wacky batch of stuff that I picked up from that lady when I went on my trip to get the Amiga and the Mac and stuff. It also came with a bunch of these crazy old magazine price guides. Like this one is called Tenix. All right, this was the everything book for the Commodore and Amiga computers. It was like it's a catalog. Summer. Now this is important. Summer of 1993. By the way, they charged for this catalog $3.50 for this catalog. That's audacious, isn't it? Making you pay for their catalog. So just for fun. Just for a few minutes, I'm going to go over a couple of these items, and I'm just try to guess what they were going for back in the summer of '93.
I'm ready.
And you at home, especially if you're overseas,
get Google ready and get your currency
because this stuff's in U.S. dollars. Yeah. So right out of the gate, this was the first thing I saw, and I was like, I want to quiz Boat here. So right over here, we've got an Amiga 600. All right. Now, this is plain Jane. It doesn't come with jack squat, okay? Just straight up, in 1993, what do you figure the 600 was going for in the U.S.?
I'd say $399.
You're actually close. It was $299.
Oh, okay.
Now, I always wanted a 600, in the last, say, 15 years. But when they came out, no one wanted these things, and no one wanted to afford them at all. No AGA chipset meant no buy.
Right.
So I've got here the Amiga 1200, and I would love to quiz you on that, but they've got down here the price. You have to call them.
Yeah, call for price.
You have to call them for price. So I saw something else here I thought was interesting. they've got here, and this, I swear, I've never seen one of these, but I'd seen it in the magazines. It's a CD-ROM for the A500, okay? The A500.
Okay, so a sidecar deal.
That's a sidecar deal. So they've got the disc here. It's a disc caddy. You can see it at home there. So what do you figure just that drive was going for? Now keep in mind, right now you can go out and get a CD-ROM for what, $5?
Oh, people literally can't give them away.
That's right, but this is 93.
93. I'd say that's a solid $5.99.
No, you're way off, bud. $2.19.
$2.19.
Much more reasonable.
That's much more reasonable. And I thought that CD-ROMs at that time were going for disk drive prices in the early 80s.
Now this right here is as timely and as appropriate as anything we could find in here. This is the, if you'll recall, we have the House 500, right? The Amiga 500. We beat this thing down. We put a new case on it. We showered it with love. It also has a Supra Data Flyer Express on it. You'll recall this, right?
Yeah.
So we have the Super Data Flyer Express that has the SCSI and the IDE, both. Right? We're very fortunate to get this. Right? Very rare, very rare. They have that in this magazine right here. They have the price right here. So what do you think? Now this is no drive, mind you. This is just the Supra Data Flyer Express, the SCSI, and the IDE.
So just to refresh my memory on what this thing is, this is basically a hard drive interface, an external hard drive interface for the Amiga.
That's right. And also,
does it come with the extra RAM like yours does?
No,
okay.
you got to get a RAM comes separately. And I'll tell you, a 1 meg of RAM for this thing, $45.
Okay.
For a meg, a megabyte.
I'd say.
So how much do you figure the one that has the SCSI and the IDE? What do you figure that was going for back in them days?
I think $99.
Okay, no. $200.
Wow.
This thing is going for. That's a pretty good shot. These things were at price. I mean, also SCSI and IDE.
But I mean, why would you want both?
More options, or maybe you wanted to have a hard drive and you were going to hook up a CD-ROM.
Okay.
A lot of CD-ROMs back in those days were SCSI. So
were they?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I've never seen a SCSI CD-ROM.
SCSI
before.
was a bigger deal back in the day.
I believe you.
It's not any deal now. It's not a deal at all. It's funny to look through these books and you see all the old crazy hand scanners. Did you ever play with those hand digitizers?
A little bit, but they were always terrible. I don't have a steady hand.
My buddy the Chadster, shout out to Chad, he bought one of these hand digitizers, right? Now, if you're not familiar with these, y'all, you put your page down, right, and then you took the scanner, and it was sort of like you could put your hand over this, but the front part was larger than your hand, and you would slowly scan your stuff,
right, like
moving
you're
it down the
wall.
page. That's right, except way slower, right? Like you're painting with like tar, and then it would come up on the screen, and you'd save it. And he got this thing, and I was like, "Holy smokes!" It was this black and white, of course. This was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So
this was before flatbed scanners were really prevalent, right?
Oh yeah, way before. I mean, I think flatbed scanners. By the way, that's something else that was a lot more SCSI, believe it or not. Flatbed scanners were around, but you're talking $1 zillion, right? These are much more reasonable. And I remember him coming down to my apartment. This would have been in 93 or 94 or 93. And I'm taking that scanner and scanning comic books with it. And I'm just like, man, I'm going to be the king of the BBS. Because you could take these graphics and I remember even colorizing them.
Oh, wow.
You
were inking.
Well, I mean, with the computer. I was using, whatever horrible paint program there was on DOS. I might have been using the Amiga. But
you didn't get any job offers from Marvel when they saw your work?
No, man, I prayed legal threats. Like, what are you doing? You're killing us here. But so those were a lot of fun. And then anytime I see a modem, I've had a lot of people talking to me about getting the Amiga online. There's a lot of different ways to do it now, and they say I can go back. I'm not sure I can or not, but I may give it a whirl. Once the price comes down a little bit. So you did pretty good on the price challenge. That's not too bad.
Thank you. I'm going to pick something at random.
Are you now? It's time for me to be challenged.
Yep.
They've got C64 stuff in there as well.
Okay, I'm going to pick something that you really will like. Okay. So this is the designer's pencil.
Okay.
Okay. So this is this is sort of like, do you remember the thing on the old computers, the light pen?
Yes,
I
do.
think that's what this is. Okay, I'm going to read you the thing here. It says, simply plug in this cartridge and let the creativity flow.
So this is a C64 thing.
Yes.
Okay.
This program uses a special new programming technique called prog, creative name,
Called Prog?
to allow you to program pictures on the screen. Have fun, Leonardo. Includes demo art. So I don't even think this is a pencil.
Fun,
This is just a
Leonardo.
cartridge.
Well,
How much was it? How much do you think this
So there's
cartridge
no,
is
all
going
this
for?
is a cartridge.
Yeah.
It can't be that much. $35.
$9.99, even less than you thought.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
$9.
not $999.
You know, do you remember koala pads?
Yeah, we had those in elementary school.
We, my buddy, I think Brent maybe even had one, and you could draw on them.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not familiar with it, it was a flat thingy with I believe it had a stylus sort of a deal on it, right? It was like a full size pencil. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like as small as a stylus, and you could draw on it. Now those were pretty snazzy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Now, again, shout out to my buddy Chad. He had this thing that was and he used this for a mouse for years, and I was relentlessly making fun of him for it, because this is, picture like a square almost as big as this table, which is, you know, let's say 2.5 foot by 2.5 foot square. And then, so he had this thing hooked up to his computer, and then he had a little pointing device, or a little mover that was about 6 inches long, and it had a little crosshairs and a little plastic circle, and it had 4 different colored little buttons on it. And you moved it around this pad, and it was for, surely it was for architectural work or something like that, but he used it as a mouse. So this thing would take up, like half his desk. It was huge, and you can't set stuff on it because it won't work, you know. And so this thing, I kept laughing. I mean, for years he had this thing, like a decade, right? And I kept saying, "Why don't you just get a mouse?" Well, you know, I don't like them, kind of quirky, blah blah blah. So he had a fire, okay. It burned up a ton of stuff in his room, and that is a whole other story about this fire that he was involved in. And I thought, well, at least he's finally gotten rid of that stupid thing. No, the thing remained unscathed. It's impervious to fire. And so finally, I was like, listen, you've got to get rid of this stupid thing. He finally, and it was probably 1997 or 98,
Wow.
he finally gave up on this thing. But for years, he had this thing.
You know, that just reinforces my opinion that we've got to get Wilcox on the show.
Yeah, he'd fit right in.
Yeah.
This was he was the king of the wacky peripherals. He had a case. I'll never forget this. He had a case that was called the Eliminator class case, right? Because he was really into cases. And it was this huge PC case. It was probably 3 times the size of it. It was like a board cube. Mm-hmm. And to put your motherboard in it, you had to take out 2 power supplies just to get it in there. It didn't have an opening. And I remember him putting it together, and then once he got his motherboard in, he realized it wouldn't fit. So he had to make all kinds of these modifications for this thing. It was so huge.
Oh, man.
It was great. I used to make fun of that Eliminator class case. I mean, his computer rig would take up a whole room between that case and that mouse thing he had. It was like 15 foot of computer space wasted.
Oh, man. Well, we put it off long enough,
Back
Aaron.
in them days.
It's time to talk R-Type.
R-Type. Well, let's go ahead and talk about R-Type. So, R-Type was a nutty little game, released on the Amiga in '89. So, this game came on 1 disc, pretty impressive, and it was developed by Factor 5 / Rainbow Arts. Now, what do you remember about Factor 5, Bo? We've actually covered several of their games. Can you name any of them?
Turrican, definitely.
Yeah, that's right. And what else?
Factor 5.
One more prominent game. At least we thought it was pretty prominent.
Was it Micro League Wrestling?
No.
I know. I'll kick
BC
myself for
Kid.
not. BC Kid. That's right.
BC Kid. So it was based on a game, an arcade game from an outfit called Irem, right?
Irem, yep.
Now, Irem had a bunch. This was licensed from them. They had several Irem games.
10-yard fight Irem game.
They
Ikari Warriors.
On the Amiga, they had games, and Irem must have some kind of weird. They're a strange company because I don't understand some of the stuff. I looked at what they had that was on the Amiga, and this is what came up. And I explained this to them, maybe you can. So you got the R-Types, right? You got Ninja Spirit, Mr. Heli, Vigilante, right? Dragon Breed, and then it spit up Ghouls and Ghosts. Now, how does IRM had nothing to do with? Did they have anything to do with Ghouls and Ghosts?
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Yeah, I bet maybe that's a typo.
It could
Because
be.
I think Ghouls and Ghosts,
It's a Capcom joint.
yeah,
Isn't it?
Capcom.
But anyway, so they had some stuff on the Amiga. So, and this was published by Activision in the U.S. and Electronic Dreams in the rest of the world. So, this was converted to like a million things. Well, before we get into this, let's just say this is one of the all-time popular classic shooters, right? When you say,
Yeah.
I would put it in the same vein as, say, a Contra was for that in that genre. It's like the old school king of its genre.
Well, I would compare it more with like Gradius.
I'm not comparing. I'm just saying it's stature and gaming.
Life Force. I mean, we're talking about classic horizontal shooters.
Right.
Yeah, it's among the legends.
So
for
listen
sure.
to this lineup of ports for this thing. Grab a cup of coffee, right? So you got the Amstrad, the whole family. Everyone got one, right? The Atari ST, the C64, the 128, the MSX, the PC Engine / TurboGrafx. Now TurboGrafx had, I think, 2 versions. They had one that was on the Hue cards, that was 2 Hue cards, and then they had, I think they came out with a CD version as well. The NEC PC, that would have been the TurboGrafx, so that's the CD one. So you got the Game Boy Virtual Console. It's on all those. That's one of the first games they always release on these things. The Master System, the Sharp X68000, Sinclair ZX Spectrum, and the PlayStation had one. And then it was also released on like a compilation disc like a downloadable, classics thing for the PlayStation, and also I think it's on the 360 too. So it's been on everything. It is one of the all-time great games, and I guess it's super popular overseas. Now, we were talking about this when we did the playthrough. As popular as this game is, and I knew about it, right? I don't remember anyone ever telling me, "Man, I love that R-Type." Was it that popular over here? Do you think? Do you remember? Because this was a game that you hear about it all the time in lists of classics, but I don't remember anyone that's saying, "Boy, I love that R-Type."
I don't remember. Well, my experience is clouded because so much of it was filtered through arcade ports that came to the NES.
Yeah.
And this game had no NES. Now, Super R-Type came to the Super Nintendo.
Right.
But yeah, I remember reading about it in Nintendo Power, but none of my friends were really into it.
Right. So yeah, I remember this. Sadly, I remember this being in the arcade too. But it was one of those games that I would try once. I would get killed before the coin hit the end of the box that it fell in. Then I'd be like, well, screw that.
Mm-hmm.
So the gimmick in this game is that the plot anyway, you're trying to defend humanity against an alien life form known as Bido. That's basically all the story you're going to get, because in essence, you're a little ship that flies from left to right and shoots stuff, right?
Right.
This game, however, and I will say this is one place that I have to give it credit. Now, we've seen a ton of games like this, and the Amiga has just chock full of them, like Menace and Blood Money, and we've covered some. Before we started reviewing this, I had played this game totally wrong for years and years on the Amiga, because I had it and I could never get nowhere and I sucked. The secret to this game is the Force, all right? In this game, you can pick up multiple power-ups, okay? That's sort of its gimmick. And one of the gimmicks you get is this little glowing ball that's hooked that floats independently of your ship. And it's called the Force, right? And you can send this thing. It'll go out and shoot on its own. It'll also just ram into stuff and kill stuff, right? You can also push your ship to it and hook it onto the ship. You can hook it on the front of the ship or the back of the ship, right? And when it's on the ship, it makes that part of your ship basically invulnerable to bullets, and it'll also, if you ram that part of the ship into stuff, it'll damage it, provided you aren't touching the rest of your ship with it, right? And you can also separate it from your ship again and send it back out to do stuff. So it's going to take some more explaining, but that's the gist of it. So all the years I played this, I never realized and I wasn't going to make the same mistake I did when we reviewed, I think it was Super Stardust,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I didn't know all the controls. I'll
Yeah.
never forget that. I felt like such a jerk. This game has a keyboard command, and it's a space bar. If you hit the space bar, the little thing will separate, and it'll go do its thing, and you can bring it back. It's vital in this game to have a mastery of that little device, because there are plenty of scenarios that you're going to encounter where you're going to be needing firepower or indestructibility from one side or the other of your ship. There's also many a boss battle where you have to have this thing like connected to you in some way to give you an advantage to kill something quickly, right? This little tidbit separates this game from most other games, certainly of that time period, where most of them were just standard, go and shoot stuff and drop a bomb, that sort of stuff. It gives this game a lot more flavor for me. What about you? Before we get into the negative stuff, what do you think about the overall gameplay and the overall concept behind it?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that the power-up system makes this game unique. I think that the enemies are also uniquely drawn. Like, sometimes you're wondering, like, what is that thing? But everything seems to be drawn with care. And of course, that's more of the feature of the arcade game, since this is a port than the actual port itself. But the port itself is, I think, very accurate to the arcade. The arcade has a little bit higher resolution, but that's to be expected. It seemed to me that the arcade version actually played a little bit slower. Did you find that too?
It's funny you should mention that, because I have to agree with you on that. The main differences between the Amiga version of this and like the arcade versions are the background in some areas isn't as detailed. That's not that background layer. And some of the enemies are a little different, right? But it's like a boss enemy. But I think it does play a bit quicker on the Amiga version. Plus, any faults that I found in the Amiga version, or things I didn't like, or just, I'm not even calling them faults, stuff that made it difficult for me to play it, I had the exact same problem when we went over and played the arcade game. And I played the arcade game probably about as much this week as I played the Amiga version. And they're very similar. I mean, they really did their homework on this one. But Factify, they generally are a pretty respected company, so I'm not terribly surprised that it would play similarly. Now, what did you think of the whole concept of the little device that separates from your ship? Did you garner any skill with using that?
Well, it's less of a question of did I garner any skill, because I didn't have much skill to begin with.
Well, did you garner skill?
But I think that the orb mechanic is much more interesting than just giving you a better gun or a bigger gun. It's something new and it's something different, and that's what games in this genre need, because there are so many of them.
Now, for me, one problem this game has is that if you lose those power-ups, you're boned. I mean, let me rephrase that. I'm boned because I don't have the skill to not have them. Even with them, I'm boned, but I'm super duper boned. This is one of those games. R-Type has a rep for being ridiculously hard, which on the Amiga put it on the pile. Right? There's a lot of games like that, but this one in particular, I found difficult to the point that I was smashing my desk in anger and wanting to jump up and kill somebody. It just drove me nuts. I would put it on infinite lives, okay? Because I knew I could do anything. I was trying to go as far as I could. And even with infinite lives, it was just rock hard and frustrating as heck. You would have to really be a good hand. And forget about playing, like, I was playing this on an emulator, and that's out. I mean, you can play it on emulator, but you can't play with a keyboard. That's a no sell. It's gonna have to have a good joystick, something you're real comfortable with.
Another thing that we discovered as we were playing this is that playing it with a joystick, at least in my experience, was not as fun as playing it with a control pad.
Yeah, when we played this for the Amigos Plays, I had hooked up my Super Nintendo to Amiga little conversion box to my 1200, and boy, that thing paid for itself. And another beef I've got with this game is that you have to. It doesn't have rapid fire. Okay, so you have to just hit the button a lot.
And when you're playing on an arcade machine, it's easy to hit that button over and over again. But when you're using a joystick, I mean, the button just isn't as conducive
It's
to that
so
sort of
tiring.
rapid movement.
And the flip side of it is, one of the features of this game is if you hold, you can charge a super shot. There's a little meter at the bottom of the screen. You hold the button down, and the meter fills up, and then you unleash this like big blow of laser that can shoot multiple enemies to one shot or kill enemies that are more difficult to kill. And so you couldn't just build in rapid fire on the button. Some of these games you just hold the button down and it automatically fires. The one thing about the Super Nintendo controller that I had is it gives you 4-button control, 2 buttons that are normal for the Amiga, and then 2 that are automatically on rapid fire. That was a lifesaver. Without that, it's painful to play this game. And I mean, it was killing me. It was physically hurting my hand. I was so much firing. It was just brutal. Which, it was you can't not shoot for 1 second, or you're screwed.
Right.
This game, again, I mentioned earlier, this came out in '89. So this came out in the arcades in '87. So it wasn't too long of a turnaround. And like I said, this game was pretty well received in the arcades. So I looked over a bunch of the different versions of the game, right? And like I said, they had made it for a bunch of stuff. And actually, the Amiga version is one of the better versions for the home market. A lot of people really like the C64 version of it. That people have a lot of respect for it. It's a good one. The X68000 has a real good version, as you would imagine. This was a big game in Japan, so I'm not surprised by that. And of course,
I think it came from Japan.
What?
R-Type.
It did. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. That
Yeah.
was so did the 68000.
Right.
My point.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had good ports, but the Amiga got one of the better ports and probably got the best sounding port. The Atari ST version of this isn't bad, but the sound is nowhere near as good as the Amiga version. So if you're going to play this at home, you could do much worse. But even like some of the crummier ports weren't bad. The Master System port looked pretty good. Who'd have thunk it, right? The
Yeah.
Master System, right? But so that was.
We'll have
kinda
to take
neat.
a look at a couple of the other ports next time we're over at the clubhouse.
Yeah. So this game received a lot of praise when it was released, and the reviews for it on the Amiga side were pretty good. So most of the reviews on this thing, you can see how blind I'm getting, y'all. You're looking at everywhere from the 80s to 90s. It was a well-received game, and like I said, a lot of it was just the fact that it was so arcade perfect.
Right.
We should mention the title music on this. In the arcade, it didn't have a title music. In this, the very popular, the very respected Chris Hulsbeck did the opening score. This is the same Chris that was responsible for music in Gianna Sisters, the Turkins, Monkey Island, tons of other stuff. So he did, and then the rest of the music, from what I could tell, was ported directly over from the arcade. The tunes are pretty identical. I was looking through all the different soundtracks to pick some stuff out to put in the intro and outro of the videos, and just was comparing the two. And the Amiga's music is, it stands up pretty well. It's right there with the arcade. If you put the Amiga, you could probably take this whole game and put it in an arcade, and no one would think twice about it.
Yeah.
And the load times were respectful. Something else we should mention that we discovered, and I guess we're the dumb guys, but we thought you could have 2 players simultaneous. So for the longest time, we sat there in a vain attempt to start up player 2. And it does have 2-player, but it's hot seat. It doesn't have simultaneous play.
And you've got to share the joystick.
Yeah, that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
A little bit of a bummer. I also think the box art's pretty slick on this. That's cool looking.
It's funny because I searched all over the internet and I could not find an original Amiga box art for this game. This is a re-release, a $7.99 sort of budget title series.
Yeah,
so.
this game had a budget release. Big Box 2 was one of the budget releases. So overall, Boat, that much, does the fact that we stink at it and we're no good and it's rock hard, how does that affect your overall opinion of the game?
I can still respect a game that is too hard for me. I think that this is...
Because they're all like that.
Yeah, because many of them are. This is not a game this is not a genre that I play for fun. I find it to be incredibly frustrating, but there are
Yes.
people that love this kind of game. They love training themselves to be able to do these on 1 credit. I think as these types of games go, this is one of the best, especially from this era, from that late 80s era where there were a ton of games like this. I like sort of it's a combination of like organic matter that you're fighting against and also like mechanical stuff. I think that your ship is very well drawn. I think that the enemies are well drawn. The art is good. The music is fine. I really
liked it actually.
I really like the title music, which is the only you only hear it once, but
It's
I
good.
like that tune. Yeah,
it's real good too. I kind of dug a lot of the music. I watched the whole game played, and I will say I like the different levels are pretty interesting. There's levels where you look like you're inside sort of like a giant machine. There's levels where you fight these giant like spaceships that are flying around. You have to shoot all the outsides of them off. That's level. There's like an organic level where it's like more green type stuff. For a shooter, the levels are pretty interesting.
Yeah,
you
this
know?
is something that I think a game like this has over something like Blood Money, where it seems like, I don't know, it just seemed like the Blood Money, the enemies were cool looking, but they were all sort of monocolor, and the environments, I guess. The environments just weren't as neat to look at.
Well,
as
also
our
the
types.
enemies that say a Blood Money, they are real. Those patterns aren't real. Like this game, it's part shooter, but it's also part. You have to play it to understand the path you have to go on.
Right.
And so that's a unique element to it that something like a Blood Money wouldn't really have, in my opinion. I think this is a superior game to Blood Money, for example, or Menace. But again, if you like the arcade version, you're in luck.
Right.
If you didn't like the arcade version, you're not into like shooters that are going to make you want to jump off a cliff, I'd take a pass.
Yeah.
On this one. I did have a quick look on eBay just to see what kind of action it was getting. Again, this is one you would think you'd see a lot of them out there, but there weren't. So the Hit Squad version, which is the re-release, the budget version, not the compilation, just the budget. They had a budget release. I found that in the UK for $50 shipped. That's US dollars. I found an original box copy in France. They went $88.
Wow.
US shipped. So that's.
I can understand this game commanding those kind of prices, though. It is a classic in the genre.
Yeah. And like I said, I actually found the box, and the box is awesome. The original box is real cool looking. So it's like that picture, but just bigger. So we're gonna touch on R-Type 2 as well, real quick. They're both sort of similar in a lot of ways, obviously. So R-Type 2 was released on the Amiga in '91, so a couple years later. Again, it came on one disc. And it was developed by a different outfit, which I thought was kind of interesting. It was developed by an outfit called Arc Developments. Now, I don't think we've done any of their stuff. Actually, you've played a couple of their games. Actually, we both played a couple of Amigos plays. They did a real weird variety of games, so check these games out. Arc Development, okay? You got Armalite, Beavers, Crackdown, Dragon Breed, Forgotten World, so you got some ports in there. Liverpool. It's called Liverpool the Game.
Wow.
I don't know what that is.
Might need to check that out.
Nick Faldo Golf.
All right. Nick Faldo's Fighting Golf.
Predator 2. Robozone. Scrabble. They did the Bart Simpson's Versus games. Bart Simpson's Versus Space Mutants and Bart Simpson's Versus the World. And then what truly must be the dud of their collection. They were responsible for the WWF European Rampage Tour.
Oh, man.
Which is just inexcusable. Again, this game is very, very similar to R-Type 1 with some interesting adjustments, though. Number one, this game, I think, looks better. Honestly, I think it's got a better look to it than R-Type 1 on the Amiga. I think it's more graphically pleasing to me to view. I found this one easier to play. I don't know why. I think the first level starts out a lot easier. That's probably one reason. But I put on my cheat and did okay. Another addition of this game, the power-up bar that you had from the first game, the beam bar where you hold down the button until it charges fully, then you can hit the super beam. This one has like a super duper beam. If you keep holding it, it'll fill that bar up again. So the old beam is still there. It just shoots a big fat beam across the screen. The super duper beam shoots this sort of it looks like a DNA strand of fire that goes across. I spit so hard right there trying to get that out. It shoots crazily across the screen in a wacky pattern, which is cool. Otherwise, it's the same basic gimmick. It's a side scrolling shooter, and you fight a variety of enemies and a boss. This didn't get the conversions that the first one got. This one's out on Android stuff, right? An Apple, iOS stuff. The Atari ST did get a port. This one's in the Xbox Live Arcade. This one had an Ouya release. I actually still own the Ouya. No, I don't. I sold the Ouya, but I've got the game stick.
Who was foolish enough to buy
I
an
got a
Ouya
good
from
price
you?
for the Ouya.
Maybe it's going to be one of those weird things like it's a collector's item. Maybe it's the Vectrex of the 2000s.
I saw the writing on the wall. I don't think it is. The PlayStation got a conversion over as well. So that's it. So I mean, you'd think this would be on like the X68000. I guess by 92 or 91, a lot of those systems were no longer, being supported.
Right.
So that surprised me with the popularity of the first one. I thought it'd be on a lot more stuff. So again, this was done by IRM, same exact stuff as before. I don't have a whole lot more to say about R-Type 2. I played it. Like I said, I think it's got a smoother look to it. It's got, some of the bosses in this are real wacky. The first game had some wacky bosses, but this one has some real wacky bosses too. Giant mechs and weird lizardy looking stuff and weird organic masses. It's hard.
Sounds like a Lovecraft novel.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. Now this one had cool weapons. Like it had different power-ups than the first one had. To me, it moved a little bit smoother.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me is just everything seems to just be more smooth. And maybe it's a higher frame rate that it's running at. I can't explain exactly why I think that, but also everything is just at a higher resolution. There's more detail in everything.
Yeah, the Force gets cooler in this. You get more weapons and stuff where it could do more stuff. I would love to tell you that I could show you or demonstrate these things, but I've seen it done. I've read it.
It's best to leave Zeus Daz and World of Long Plays.
It's another game that, don't get me wrong, it's still tough. The Amiga also, there's cool like water effects in it that look nice. There's like the backgrounds are nicer looking, but of course this is 91. They've had a few more years to understand what the Amiga's capable of, and what it can do. It's got 6 levels and. Again, each level has an end guy. There was a game called Super R-Type that was released in 91, and that was in Japan for the Super Famicom. That's sort of a port of R-Type 2, and it's also available in the Virtual Consoles. Again, a big deal in Japan. It never came over here. And also, they ended up having a Game Boy port that only has 5 of the levels. So the Amiga version of this is considered the good one. Mm-hmm. Again, the music again, it's pretty good. Sort of kind of the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
These games, it's funny, from 2 different outfits with 2 different staffs, but the games aren't entirely the same. But the spirit's still there. I think of the original game. It doesn't. When I played it, I didn't think to myself, "Wow, this is anything like the first one." It's a lot like it, actually.
Yeah.
The force feels about the same. The levels are similar. I think the levels, aside from the fact that they're more visually pleasing, I think the enemies are kind of more interesting in this one too. But again,
it's really the second part is an upgrade in every sense.
Yeah, I agree. But now that much said, it never got the popularity of the first one. So, I don't know what that means. Again, if I was a shooter fan, or maybe there are subtleties that I don't understand, but I don't know. It reviewed also pretty well, 80s right down the line, except for some the usual suspects that had it in the 70s. Amiga Joker being the one that I always looked to see if they killed it or not. The eBay also has this one, but again, this was even tougher to find, even more expensive. So if you're in Spain, you're in business. $90 shipped. That's U.S. dollars, but it's the full box. If you're in Germany, you can get the disc only. It's only $26 U.S. shipped for the disc. That's pretty pricey.
Yeah.
And the big dog, if you're in Germany and you really want R-Type 2, There's a dude on eBay selling it for 120 US bucks
Whoa.
shipped or best offer. So maybe you can
Talk them down a little bit.
needle them down to maybe $100 on that. But probably of the two, I would probably prefer R-Type 2, just again because I think it's a little. I mean, don't get me wrong when I say it's easier. It's not easier. It's just I can get a few seconds further than I can in the first one, where I can get nowhere. If you're someone like me, a rapid-fire joystick's a necessity, and also cheating early and often. There's plenty of trainers out. The first one, on R-Type 1, I could only find trainers that would give you infinite lives. On R-Type 2, I could actually find trainers that would actually let me not get hurt. So I could actually go through the game, like a coward and see what was going on. Overall, I'm like you. I can enjoy or recommend a game that I'm horrible at, but man, these games both are so frustrating. It made me so mad. I would get so mad, and I would get killed in the same place over and over and over and over. And I would watch someone go through that section on the playthrough, and I'd go back and try it again, and just couldn't do it, man. It's killing me. So, too hard for me.
Yeah.
Sorry to say.
Me too. It's
oldness.
Yeah, oldness.
They're old
and
games.
just-
We still stand.
Yeah. It's never been my genre. I'll let you know when I find my genre because
please
I
tell
seem
me.
to be bad at most. But overall, I'm in the exact same boat. I would recommend this game to anybody that's a fan of horizontal shooters. It's sort of the best of breed on the Amiga.
Yes, I'd say it's amongst the top ones.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and move on towards the end of the show. I want to remind everyone out there in listener land to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Google+, whatever your social media platform of
Everything.
choice is.
ICQ, AOL, everything.
We're all over it. Instant Messenger for
Remember,
the next 2 weeks
Yeah.
until they close it down.
I heard that was going away. People were so sad. Oh, I'm gonna miss it. That was a horrible program.
Hey.
ICQ was a million times better, and they took it over and bloated it up too.
So,
I hate AOL. Did I mention that?
I'm not surprised. I want to take a second and thank our Patreon supporters. If you would like to support our wacky show, you can head on over to patreon.com/Amigos podcast. Throw us a couple bucks every month, and it will help us keep the lights on.
You can listen to our really idiotic rantings in the pre-show.
That's right. We do a pre-show every week.
Every week it gets longer and more pathetic. This week, the new world record.
And there's just a lot of fun stuff that's involved for our Patreon community, as well as an audio feed of the pre-show as well for you to listen on your commute.
I can't help but notice you picked your guitar back up.
We're bringing it back.
Oh, man.
This is a tribute to one of your favorite bands that I can't stand. And here we
Nickelback?
go.
Your knees from this one.
Dream Capper, Chris Forbes, Graham Bepke, Leigh Denson, Adam Battersby, Gary Hucker, Brian Jones, and Ravi and O'Brien's, Paul Harrington, Duncan, Styles, Allen, Kebab, Anthony, Jarvis, Tate from the Crib, and Josh Nam, Will Williams, Adam Bradley, Neil Mansell, Ronis, Rolo, THT. Lamb, Tommy Humberstad, and Brutal Barracuda, Darren Coles, Jason Wands, Pixels at Dawn, Kjolbjorn Barman.
I liked it. I like that. It's the best one you've done.
Thank you.
It always slightly offended me. While you were playing that, I don't know why it's popped into my head. We should mention that coming soon, should be out next week or so, the Kickstart magazine will be out.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to mention that before the show was over. We've been talking with the main man, and there should be an R-Type article in the magazine.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. It should be, I'd say, probably within the next week he'll have it out. Pick it up, free, totally awesome magazine, available on everythingamiga.com. Our good boy does it, and he does a great job.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I look forward to every time. Download it, fire it up on the John. Oh, too much information. Sorry.
Try to get that out of your head when you download the Kickstarter magazine.
All right, Aaron, next week it's my turn to pick. And
Yes.
we're bringing it back to a sequel that I know you can't wait to try.
Oh, no.
We're going to play Zool 2.
Zool 2?
Zool 2.
Electric Boogaloo? Electric Bugaloo.
It's going to be fun. He is an ant.
He's not an ant.
He is not an ant. He's a representative from an ant-like race.
He's from the nth dimension.
That's right. We're going to check it out.
Sounds like a plan, man.
Hey, if you want to check us out live, we record every Friday.
You can just sit right down
Except,
here. Bo will play a little concert.
Come on down. We record every Friday at around 5 p.m. Eastern, live on twitch.tv/Amigos podcast. I want to thank all of our fine folks here in the chat room. We've got Art State Digital, Pixels at Dawn Gaming, Paul Kitching, Hasifa, and anyone else that I might have missed. Thank you for hanging out with us. You're always welcome in the chat as we do these live shows, and of
You
course,
can hear all our screw ups.
yeah, we export this to YouTube. You can always watch us after the fact on YouTube. Make sure you check out everythingamiga.com, and we will see you next week. Until then, adios.